This is part two of the public and the private school series. And in this episode, we're going to specifically focus on whether your school type dictates your Ivy League chances. If you think this is going to be of any interest to you, please like, subscribe, and share, and stay till the end of the video. By Ivy League, I mean the 8 very prestigious colleges in the Northeast region of the United States. So, which are these 8 colleges? There's Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Dartmouth, UPenn, Cornell, Brown, and Princeton. So these 8 colleges serve as a benchmark fairly or unfairly for elite college admissions. So what do the numbers tell us? I want to be upfront right now and let you know that precise and aggregated data across all Ivy Leagues comparing public versus private origins is hard to pin down, since Ivy Leagues try to guard this data as much as possible. But I'm going to try my best to give you as many facts and figures that will help you make an informed decision. All right, so let's establish a baseline first. According to the National Center of Education Studies, 9 to 10% of students go to private schools in the United States, which means that 1 out of 10 students goes to private schools. Now, keep that number in mind because I'm going to come back to this after giving you a detailed explanation of what is happening with this number. Now, let's look at the numbers of the Ivy League admissions. Usually, this data is very hard to find online because the universities like to guard this data, demographic data. But there's a lot of research and analysis done by the university newspapers like the Harvard Crimson, which shows like a significant pattern. And if you see this pattern and the freshman Ivy League classes, 30 to 40% of these classes comprise of students coming from private schools. All right, so let's process that. As I mentioned before, only 10% of students in the United States go to private schools, yet they comprise of, say, 3 to 4 times that proportion of the students entering Ivy Leagues. According to a recent Harvard study, 30 to 37% of students are from private schools in the Harvard freshman year class. The trend is pretty similar in other Ivy Leagues as well, but it may vary slightly from university to university and year by year, but it's consistently more than 10% of the national baseline. So statistically speaking, yes, private school students are overrepresented at Ivy League university compared or relative to their share of the overall student population in the United States. But hold on, do not get worried that you have to shell out a big chunk of money for private schools. Because if you look at the number of students going to public schools, it's definitely way more than the number of students going to private schools, which is 9 out of 10 students go to public schools. So if private schools make up 30 to 40% of Ivy League admits, the 60 to 70% is still coming from public schools, which means that Ivy Leagues are still accepting more students from public schools than private schools. So let's discuss why private school students are overrepresented at Ivy League colleges. I think the number one factor is resources. Private schools definitely have very high funding per student, which means they have smaller classes, very specialized programs, great programs for preparing students for college admissions, college counseling departments who have deep expertise in elite admissions. So also the counselor to student ratio in private schools is way lower than the counselor to student ratios in public schools. The second point is socioeconomic factors, meaning private school attendance correlates to your family's income and the parents' education levels. These factors definitely contribute to or give a private school student access to better test prep, extracurricular activities, legacy connections, and overall just enhancing the student's profile or bio and the ability to navigate through extensive and complex college admission processes, independent of the school itself. The third and the most important one is curriculum and feeder schools, meaning most private schools end up tailoring their curriculum according to what an Ivy League college would require out of a student. And also then cultivating, that feeder school reputation by developing relationships and a track record with the Ivy League admission offices. The takeaway is that Ivy League admissions are very, very holistic, meaning that the admission officers are well trained to evaluate an application in a very holistic way. They understand the differences between a highly resourced private school and a large under resourced public school. So when they're making their decision, they're aware of all these factors and where that child is coming from and what he has achieved in those particular circumstances. You may give a child all these extra resources and classes, but the child is doing well because of that. However, in a public school, a child may not have all these resources and still do well. So if you weigh the options, it's definitely the public school student who's outperformed and really been consistent and done a great job, right? So, in my opinion, I think excelling academically, taking the most rigorous courses available to you, demonstrating leadership, having great extracurriculars and essays are paramount in spite of the type of school you go to. So, to wrap it up, statistics show that private school students are highly overrepresented at Ivy League colleges, mostly because of the access to resources and socioeconomic backgrounds. But that doesn't mean that public schools are not good. Most of the students, even now in Ivy Leagues, come from public schools. Private school is neither a requirement or a guarantee, so don't feel compelled to send your kid to a private school just because your neighbors or your peers are doing so. It has nothing to do with how much money you have or you don't have. I know a lot of people who are doing very well in their careers, are doctors, and are sending their children to public schools because they live in a great area and the school that they're districted to is fantastic, has all the resources they need for their child's development. Do what feels best for your child, and make sure you watch my first video where I'm talking about the pros and cons of public versus private schools. So that's your quick 5-minute fact check on college admissions when you're comparing public versus private school admits. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and click the bell icon at the bottom. This is Rishanka Jones signing off.